Hi, I'm Beverly Jacobson, mama to Verity, a little girl with full trisomy 18. In this video series, we're giving some quick answers to commonly asked questions about trisomy. And in this video, we're going to look at some pros and cons of prenatal screening when it comes to the trisomy condition. Now, to be clear, let's give the disclaimer, I'm not a genetic counselor. There's a lot of this that is way out of my league, so I'm sharing my experience as a mama who received a prenatal diagnosis, and I do encourage you to find a good genetic counselor if you don't already have one that you've consulted with, who aligns with your beliefs and your value system, who can help you on this journey, because you will have questions, very specific questions that I'm just not going to be able to address in videos like these. However, let's talk a little bit about that process. Now, technology has advanced tons since my first ultrasounds were back in the year 2000. My oldest daughter is married and on her own now. And our Verity came along, I was pregnant with her in 2016. So it has been some years since I went through this process myself. We first were alerted to her condition by my blood tests, just the regular screening that we did through the pregnancy. And my doctor called and said that my risk of having a child with trisomy 18 was elevated. Instead of 1 in maybe 200, it was closer to a 1 in 10 chance that our child had this condition. Well, first of all, I had never heard about trisomy 18. I didn't know what that meant. And maybe I'll share more of our personal journey in a different video, but to stay on topic, our next step was to schedule a diagnostic ultrasound. And so we met with our genetic counselor for the first time before that ultrasound, and she went through the different reasons that, first of all, they were thinking it was Edwards syndrome as opposed to Down syndrome or a different condition. And what she said made total sense at the time. I couldn't repeat it to you now because I didn't have to hang on to that information, but it was helpful for me to understand the process. Maybe not everybody needs that, but I appreciated that hour or so that we spent with her before the ultrasound. She also told us what kinds of markers they would look for, and I'll talk about trisomy 18 characteristics in a different video. But moving on, and to the point, our ultrasound, we did see some soft markers that indicated trisomy 18 might be present. So our next steps, we could have done non-invasive testing, the NIPT. However, that can often lead to false positives, and also, especially if you're a younger mom, there are more false positives for that. So we opted to do an amniocentesis. We looked into it. It has its own risks, but they did do it guided with the ultrasound. They took precautions, and we decided that knowledge was power, and we went ahead with that. Within 24 hours, we did have confirmation that our daughter has full trisomy 18. So while that was devastating to learn, for us, the prenatal diagnosis was helpful. We felt that knowledge was power. We wanted to know what we were getting into, and to be honest, it didn't make any difference to us if that was positive or not. We believe that all lives are valuable. We believe every person has value, purpose, and dignity simply because every person is made in the image of God. And it wasn't our choice we didn't believe it was our right to end our daughter's life simply based on her diagnosis. We believe all children are a gift from God. And so it didn't matter what those test results were going to be. Now, some people go the other way and they say, well, it doesn't matter. We're carrying our baby to term, so why get that diagnosis? And so there are pros and cons both ways, and I absolutely understand that. And I have heard stories that make me think, wow, it's really good that they didn't have a for sure diagnosis because of what happened next. So let's go there. Sometimes there's actually a drawback to having that prenatal diagnosis. Studies have shown that babies with a trisomy diagnosis, if they are diagnosed prenatally, often that can actually work against them, because in the medical community, there can be some discrimination against our babies, and they might be predisposed to thinking that these children are not going to live anyways, and they are not going to offer fair care. In fact, a lot of times, well, first of all, they will often encourage abortions. Many mamas of trisomy children will testify to the fact that they were pressured or encouraged to have an abortion. And others were urged toward comfort care or hospice care simply because of the trisomy diagnosis. We felt it was important to let Verity lead the way, to let her be born on her own terms, so to speak, and then assess her and see what she needed. If she needed oxygen support, feeding support, heart surgery, we would have done that for any of our other children. And so we wanted her to have the same fair care. So again, I've addressed this in another video, but a birth plan is so, so vital. If you haven't written a birth plan and you have a prenatal diagnosis, please take time to do that. And if you need some resources, reach out. I do have a birth plan brainstorming sheet, and I also have a prenatal pregnancy a pregnancy journal for those with a prenatal diagnosis that has all of this in it as well. That can be a good resource for you. But the bottom line is, sometimes a prenatal diagnosis can work against you, depending on your medical team and where you're located. Some families have experienced that discrimination of withholding of care because of the trisomy diagnosis. There was a study done that babies who the parents did not know that they had a trisomy until after birth, those babies fared better because they were given the oxygen support they needed. They were given the feeding support and other kinds of interventions because that's what the medical team does. But sometimes those with the prenatal diagnosis didn't fare as well. Now, I feel that knowledge is power. And I feel that if you desire to advocate for your child, you will do that, and you will find what his or her needs are to the best of your ability. There's only so much we can learn, right, when they're in utero, but be prepared and be equipped. You can and you will advocate for your baby.